It's 2 a.m. again, the kind of hour when charts are dark, but the mind still flickers with what-ifs. The noise of the day has died, but the echoes of the market still whisper. That's when these stories come back to me quietly, like fog rolling in across an empty street. If you're new here, welcome to the Midnight Trading, a space for traders, thinkers, and nightwalkers who find their truth not in the noise, but in the silence. If these stories speak to you, if they help you feel seen, heard, or even just understood, take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. This is a place for those who trade not just charts, but demons. Put on your headphones, dim the lights, and let's begin. It started with a green candle, not a massive one, not even memorable in the bigger picture, but it was green, and it was mine. I still remember it clearly. AUD, USD, a small position, maybe $20 in. I had no strategy, no risk management, no real understanding of what I was doing. But I won, and that single win, that was all it took. I thought I understood something others didn't. I thought the market had just confirmed something quietly burning inside me, that I was built for this, that I had a feel for it, that trading was about intuition, about reading energy, about guts. That was the lie, and I believed it. See, nobody talks about the first win as dangerous. We glamorize it. We take screenshots. We tell our friends, or worse, we post it online. But in truth, the first win can be the most damaging thing a new trader experiences because it gives you just enough success to build a castle on sand. Winning early is like finding a loaded gun and assuming you're a marksman because you hit the first target by accident. The next day, I doubled the size, and I won again. It felt too easy. The money trickled in small but seductive. $20 became $50. $50 became $200. I started skipping meals to stare at charts. Sleep came later, if at all. My life outside the screen dimmed, but I didn't notice. I didn't care. I was winning. I was also drifting towards something darker, though I couldn't name it at the time. It wasn't long before the losses came. A pullback, a failed breakout, a reversal that made no sense. But I didn't panic. I told myself, just noise. I'll double down. That's the moment I stepped off the path. I didn't know it, but I was beginning the slow march toward the blow-up, the one almost every trader faces at some point. The fall that doesn't come from ignorance, but from ego, disguised as confidence. There's something twisted in the way risk disguises itself early on. It doesn't feel like danger. It feels like potential. The charts light up. Your account grows. You feel in control. But the foundation is hollow. There's no plan, no stop-loss, no respect for the game. You're not managing money. You're gambling on momentum. Still, you tell yourself, I'm different. And that voice, it's quiet, but powerful. It's the voice that turns a green candle into a green light for recklessness. The voice that takes a few early wins and turns them into a story about destiny. Let me pause here to say something clearly, in case nobody has told you. Yet the market doesn't care who you are. It doesn't reward good people. It doesn't punish bad ones. It doesn't remember your wins or grieve your losses. It just is cold, mechanical, alive only because of our emotions poured into it. And the most dangerous of those emotions is certainty. I once read a line by Jesse Livermore. There is nothing new on Wall Street. There can't be, because speculation is as old as the hills. That line haunts me sometimes, because when I look back, I wasn't trading. I was speculating. I was chasing a feeling, not building a system. I was following hope, not a plan. The real trap of early success is this. It teaches you that your worst habits are working. If you're risking 50% of your capital per trade, and it works 3 times, you don't think this is dangerous. You think, I've found the edge. But edges aren't built on 3 trades. They're built over hundreds, thousands of decisions made in boredom, in fear, in discipline. The early phase of trading is emotional intoxication, like falling in love too fast without understanding the person in front of you. And in this case, that person is a $6 trillion a day global market designed to punish overconfidence. There's something else I've noticed in retrospect. That early version of me didn't just crave money. I craved significance. The wins weren't just financial, they were emotional validation. Proof that I was smart, that I could escape the 9-to-5, that I didn't need a boss or a degree or anyone's permission. I needed to feel free. And for a moment, trading gave me that illusion. But illusions have a cost. If you're listening to this and you're early in your trading journey, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, what are you really chasing? Is it the money? Or is it the feeling that money gives you respect, escape identity, peace? Because if you don't know the difference, the market will teach it to you. And the lesson won't be gentle. I wish I could say I stopped there. That I saw the warning signs, took a break, got a mentor, journaled my trades. But I didn't. I pressed on. Because that's what we do when we think we're on the edge of greatness. We keep pushing until the risk we once ignored turns around and stares us in the face. And by then, it's often too late. There's a moment in every trader's journey that feels like flying. The account's up. The setups feel obvious. You're anticipating moves before they happen, not reacting, responding. And somewhere in the background, the voice that once whispered, "Be careful now," purrs, "You're getting it." That voice is seductive. It wears the costume of confidence. It feels like growth. But in truth, it's just risk smiling. I remember sitting in a dark apartment, screens glowing, caffeine burning through my veins. I hadn't showered in 2 days. Sleep was sporadic. But none of that mattered. I was locked in. My win rate was high. I had a stretch of 13 green days in a row. No losses. Small gains, sometimes big ones. And every time I closed a trade in profit, it reinforced the same thought: I'm finally becoming consistent. But consistency without process is just a lucky streak in disguise. What I didn't realize is that I hadn't developed a system. I had just survived long enough on the right side of volatility. I was riding the wave of a trending market and mistaking it for mastery. I was adding size, I was removing stops, I was adjusting entries mid-trade because the market would come back. I was making all the classic errors, but dressed them up in new language to feel smarter. It's adaptive risk. It's discretionary trading. It's price action reading. Really, it was just ego. Confidence in trading is important. But confidence without boundaries is just hubris in a suit. And hubris doesn't get stopped out, it gets blown up. See, real traders respect risk not because they're scared, but because they've seen what happens when you don't. But at that stage, I hadn't seen it yet. I was still in the sweet spot where you've made just enough money to feel invincible and just enough mistakes to think you've learned. I didn't realize I was climbing a ladder that wasn't nailed to anything. That each gain was a step higher, but the ground beneath was soft, fragile. There's this paradox in trading: you need confidence to execute, but humility to survive. Most traders never learn how to hold both. The turning point came quietly. It wasn't a crash or a massive red day. It was subtle, a losing streak, a few fakeouts, some missed entries. But instead of recalibrating, I doubled down. Because I believed I was due. That word due is a poison in the mind of every gambler. It implies the market owes you something. That there's a balance sheet being kept somewhere in the sky, and if you've had losses, then surely a win is coming. But the market doesn't owe you. It doesn't reward effort. It doesn't care how many hours you stared at the screen. It doesn't even care if you're right. Only one thing matters. Did you manage your risk? I didn't. Not when it mattered. And because of that, the market did what it always does when you forget the rules it took. Not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece. A death by 1,000 cuts. I remember one night, maybe a Thursday. I had just taken my 5th trade of the day, breaking my own rule of 3. The earlier losses were eating at me. I wanted it back. So I entered a position heavier than usual. No stop, just watching. And for a moment, it worked. It went green. I was almost whole again. But I hesitated. I didn't close. It reversed. And I didn't exit. It dropped further. And I held. The red number grew. It wasn't just a loss anymore. It was personal. I remember staring at that position, my heart pounding, hand frozen on the mouse, telling myself, "It's fine. I'll average in." So I added, and added again. The position was now so big that if it moved just a few more pips against me, I'd lose a week's profit. Then 2 weeks. Then more. That night, I slept with the trade open. I left the screen on glowing in the dark. I remember waking up every hour to check it each time, hoping it had reversed. It hadn't. I finally closed it around 4:30 a.m. It was a $2,700 loss, more than half my account. And the worst part, it wasn't even about the money. It was the realization that I had become the exact kind of trader I once swore I'd never be. That was when I started hearing the silence. Not the kind of silence that soothes, the kind that accuses. No messages from the trading group that day. I didn't post my results. I didn't open my journal. I avoided the charts. And in that quiet, I felt it not just the sting of the loss, but the unraveling of identity. Because when your confidence is built on winning and you stop winning, you don't just question your strategy. You question yourself. Was I just lucky? Am I even good at this? Did I ever really know what I was doing? And then the most dangerous thought of all, maybe I should just try one more trade to get it back. That's how the cycle keeps going. Because risk, when misunderstood, doesn't feel like danger. It feels like opportunity. And opportunity, in the hands of desperation, becomes a weapon. I didn't know it then, but I was already slipping into the next phase. The slow, grinding fall that most traders mistake for just a bad week. But it wasn't a bad week. It was the beginning of the reckoning, a test of what I actually believed. A test of whether I could admit to myself that maybe this wasn't just about strategy. Maybe the enemy wasn't the market. Maybe it was me. Loss has a strange way of reshaping time. In the early days, a trade lasts minutes, maybe hours. You're glued to the screen, tracking every tick. Every candle feels personal. You breathe with the market. But when the losses start to mount, time stretches. One losing trade becomes a whole day, a week, a month. Not because the position is open, but because the memory is. Because your mind keeps replaying it quietly, like background static you can't switch off. I didn't get a formal margin call. There was no dramatic liquidation or flashing alert from the broker. No red banner. No emergency email. Just a slow decay, like erosion. One day I logged in, and the account that once looked so full, so promising, was almost hollow. From 5,000 to 1,200. 4 months, maybe 5. And the worst part, it didn't happen because of one bad trade. It happened because I refused to let go of the idea that I was still in control. Most people think account blow-ups happen in a burst of recklessness. Some huge over-leveraged bet gone wrong. But that's not always true. Sometimes it's the slow death. The trader who loses small but refuses to pause, who thinks it's not that bad after every red day, who keeps trading without reflection, without a journal, without a plan. It's not one fire, it's 1,000 tiny burns. And eventually you look up and realize your entire house is ash. There's this scene I always come back to. I was sitting at my desk watching the screen as another stop-loss hit. Small position, small loss, just like the day before. I opened the History tab, scrolled back. Loss, loss, win, loss, loss. All small, all survivable. But the pattern was clear, and for the first time I felt it, not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. A dull ache in the chest that said, "This isn't working, and you don't know why." I didn't cry. I didn't throw my mouse or break a monitor or scream into a pillow. What I did was worse. I went silent. I shut the laptop and sat there staring at nothing, my hand resting on the trackpad like it was still connected to something. And in that silence, the questions came. Not about the strategy, not about the indicators, about me. Who am I without this? What does it mean if I failed? Where do I go from here? This is the margin call nobody talks about. It doesn't come from your broker. It comes from inside. It comes when the image of who you thought you were collapses under the weight of reality. And let me tell you something personal, that kind of loss cuts deeper than any number on a screen, because it touches identity. You start to realize how much of your self-worth was tied to the P&L, how every green day made you feel like a genius, and every red day made you question your entire existence. And when enough red days stack up, you don't just lose money, you lose yourself. I stopped trading for a while after that. Not intentionally. I just couldn't open the platform. Days passed, then weeks. I started noticing things I hadn't in months, the sound of birds in the morning, the smell of coffee that wasn't brewed next to a chart. I started sleeping more, eating better. But I was still haunted by the question, what happened? So I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my journal, not the trading one, the real one. The one with the raw notes, the voice memos, the emotional wreckage. And I found a line I'd written 3 months earlier at the peak of my confidence. This is it. I'm finally turning the corner. And underneath it, in smaller handwriting, risk is just part of the game. I've got this. It hit me like a punch. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't managing risk. I was dismissing it. I had treated risk like a formality, something to be acknowledged but not respected. I had convinced myself that I could bend the rules that I had graduated from basic discipline. But no one graduates from risk management. Not in year 1, not in year 10, not ever. There's a myth in trading that you can outgrow the basics, that once you've made a certain amount, once you've seen enough charts, you can loosen your stops, stretch your rules, trust your gut. But here's the truth. The basics aren't the beginner phase. They're the foundation. The reason most traders blow up isn't because they don't know better. It's because they think the rules don't apply to them anymore. They think risk is something you outpace. But risk doesn't care how fast you run. It waits patiently. And when you stop respecting it even for a moment, it reminds you why every great trader sounds like a broken record. Protect your capital. Stay humble. Take small losses. Because it only takes one breach of those rules to undo months, sometimes years of progress. That realization didn't fix everything overnight, but it did something more important. It cracked the door open to honesty. Honesty about who I had become as a trader. Honesty about the role my ego had played. And honesty about the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing. Not deeply, not sustainably. And that if I wanted to come back, if I wanted to trade again, I'd have to start over. From scratch. With reverence. With respect. And with a new question. How do I risk without losing myself? When you start over, it's not the same as starting fresh. Fresh is clean, naive, untouched. Starting over is different. You return to the same ground, but your hands are burned. You know what can happen. You're not just aware of risk anymore. You've felt its breath on your neck. I waited 3 months before I opened a trading account again. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't wake up one morning with a grand epiphany. It was quieter than that. A slow itch. A curiosity. Not can I make it back, just can I do this without destroying myself? I didn't wire in thousands, just $300. Enough to feel real. Small enough to walk away. I made a promise I actually meant this time. This account wasn't to grow. It was to learn. If it doubled, fine. If it halved, fine. This time it wasn't about proving anything. This time I would track every trade. I would stop trading if I felt off. I would leave the computer if I started hoping instead of thinking. It sounds so simple, like things you hear on every trading podcast. But there's a difference between knowing the rules and submitting to them. This time I submitted. The first week was boring, like watching paint dry. No trades on Monday. One tiny scalp on Tuesday. $40 profit. I didn't feel anything. And that was the first good sign. I wasn't chasing the high anymore. I didn't need the market to give me meaning. Each trade wasn't a statement about who I was. It was just a trade. That small detachment, that sliver of neutrality, was powerful. Because most traders don't blow up accounts from lack of knowledge. They blow up because of emotional over-identification. Every red candle becomes a threat. Every missed entry feels like failure. Every win becomes validation. It's not trading, it's emotional warfare. But when you let go of needing every trade to mean something, you create space. Space to think. Space to pause. And most importantly, space to stop. I remember a setup I saw that second week. Clean. Textbook. One I would have jumped on before without hesitation. But something didn't sit right. It was moving too fast. News volatility, slippage risk. So I didn't take it. I watched it go without me. It ran 60 pips. I made nothing. And I smiled. Not because I was disciplined, but because I had finally felt it. Satisfaction without action. That's rare in trading, because this game conditions you to do. To always be in. To react. But the best trades sometimes are the ones you don't take. The market doesn't reward effort. It rewards precision. And precision isn't just about where you click. It's about when you don't. There's a quote I came across during that period, one of those lines that doesn't hit until you're ready. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca, that was me, for years. I suffered not because the market was cruel, but because my imagination told me I needed to trade, to recover, to chase. I thought I was managing risk, but really, I was managing fear of missing out, fear of being wrong, fear of being left behind. It wasn't the loss of money that hurt me most. It was the erosion of trust in myself. The $300 account never became $30,000, but it became something better. It became a mirror. I saw for the first time who I was when I didn't force results. And what I saw was someone capable of patience, of restraint, of focus. 3 things I never thought I had. Not just as a trader, but as a person. And that's the shift people don't talk about enough. Trading at its core is not a strategy game. It's a self-control game. It's not about knowing what to do. It's about knowing when not to do it. I began developing habits that had nothing to do with entries or exits. I started rating my trades not on profit, but on process. Did I follow my rules? Did I hesitate? Did I enter with clarity? I'd write down how I felt before each trade. Not in long paragraphs, just a word or two. Calm, rushed, greedy, centered. I noticed a pattern. The trades I took while feeling calm or neutral tended to go best. Even if they lost, I exited clean. The ones I entered while feeling greedy or pressured, even if they won, felt dirty. Off. Like I'd cheated the system. It's funny, no one teaches that. They teach technicals, patterns, indicators, but rarely do they say, track how you feel. That's the edge. This section of my journey didn't make for flashy screenshots. I wasn't posting P&Ls. I wasn't trying to grow fast. But for the first time, I felt something better than excitement. I felt peace, not because I knew I'd make it, but because I was no longer at war with the market, no longer trying to outsmart it, just listening, responding, respecting. And when I did that, I started seeing the market for what it really was. Not a game, not an opponent, but a mirror, reflecting back the parts of me I needed to see. The ones that were patient, the ones that were impulsive, the ones that were scared, and slowly, gently. The ones that were finally learning how to be free. Free from the need to win, free from the fear of losing, Free to trade, not because I had to, but because I had learned how to stop. There's something strange that happens when you finally learn to let go of the outcome. You stop looking for certainty. You stop asking the market to love you. You stop needing every trade to prove your worth. And when that shift happens, when you finally stop gripping the wheels so hard, everything becomes quieter. Not because the market changes, but because you do. The noise that used to be deafening, the tick by tick, the news, the charts, it softens. It fades into the background like static from a distant radio. And in that space, you start to hear something else. Not a signal, not a setup. Something more personal. You start to hear yourself. I kept trading that $300 account for 6 more weeks. No big wins, a few clean trades, a few small losses. I ended up with $287 net loss. But I walked away with something I hadn't had before. Clarity. It was no longer about recovery, no longer about vengeance on the market. I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. Why did I blow up before? What made me ignore my rules? Why did I keep trading on tilt? The answer wasn't complex. It was need. I needed the market to fix me, to save me, to affirm something I hadn't resolved outside the screen. Validation, significance, control. But the market doesn't give you any of those things. It gives you feedback, cold, indifferent, honest. And once I saw that, I realized why so many traders fail. It's not because they don't know what a stop loss is. It's because they think a green trade will fix the emptiness inside. That's the silent trap. We say it's about charts, strategies, indicators, but deep down it's often about wounds. The childhood need to be right, the fear of missing out, the craving to feel like we're in control of something in an uncontrollable world. And so we trade not as professionals, but as people trying to soothe something unspoken. That's why it's so easy to overtrade, to revenge trade, to size up when we're down. It's not because we're stupid, it's because we're human. I look back at my blown account now and I don't feel shame. I feel gratitude, because it stripped away the illusion. It showed me what trading really is. It's a mirror. It's a teacher. It's a test of your character disguised as a test of your strategy. And in the ashes of that account, I found a truth I wish someone had whispered to me when I started. You don't rise in trading by force. You rise by surrender. Not surrender to the market, not passive acceptance, but surrender to reality, to the truth that you will never control the outcome. You will only ever control your preparation, your decisions, your discipline. Today, I still trade. Smaller than before, slower, with less noise. And I'll be honest, I still lose sometimes, but it's different now. A loss doesn't trigger self-doubt. A win doesn't inflate my ego. The outcome doesn't define me. What defines me is how I show up. Calm, focused, detached. And if I ever feel that old heat creeping back, the urgency, the tilt, the hunger to prove something, I stop. Not because I'm weak, but because I know how the story ends when I don't. There's a ritual I do now. After every trading week, Friday evening, I shut the platform down and ask myself 2 questions. 1, did I trade with integrity this week? 2, would I be proud to teach these habits to someone I care about? If the answer is yes, I don't care what the P&L says, because I know I'm playing the long game, not just in the markets, but in who I'm becoming. Trading will take you places no other job will. It will reveal every crack in your psychology. It will expose your impatience, your greed, your insecurity. But if you let it, if you're willing to face what you find, it can also become a path to something far deeper. Self-awareness, emotional regulation, resilience, not because trading makes you these things, but because it demands them. And if you can cultivate those things here under pressure, under volatility, under chaos, you can carry them anywhere. You won't hear that in most trading circles. You'll hear about systems, gains, alpha, but not about what happens when the trades stop, when the accounts are gone, when the silence is all that's left. That's where the real work begins. That's where the trader is forged. In the dark, in the quiet, in the moment you choose to learn, rather than escape. So if you're listening to this right now, if you're deep in red, or thinking about giving up, or wondering if you're just not cut out for this, let me say this. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are simply at the part of the story where the mask comes off, where trading stops being a thrill and becomes a mirror. What you do next, that's what will define you. Not your wins, not your losses, but your response. So ask yourself, can you trade with peace? Can you risk without needing to win? Can you lose without losing yourself? Because that, more than anything, is what separates those who last from those who don't. And maybe that's what real success looks like. Not perfection, just presence. Not control, just clarity. Take a breath. Let this all settle in. If you've made it this far, you're not just a trader, you're a thinker, a learner, someone willing to go deeper than just the numbers. And that matters because trading isn't just about charts. It's about mindset, about discipline, about the long-term game of mastering yourself, especially when everything in you wants to react. The truth is, the market will always be uncertain, volatile, sometimes cruel. But how you show up to it, that's where your power lives. It's in how you handle risk, how you bounce back from loss, how you learn when ego says you don't need to. The reason most traders blow up their accounts isn't because they're bad at strategy. It's because they underestimate themselves, their patterns, their impulses, their blind spots. But once you learn to slow down, once you trade without needing to trade, once you detach from outcome and anchor into process, that's when the shift happens. That's when the game becomes real. So ask yourself tonight, where are you trading from fear or clarity? What story are you telling yourself when you hit buy? And what kind of trader do you actually want to become? Leave a comment and share your story. Have you ever felt like this character? What's your biggest obstacle in this journey? I'd love to hear it. And if this resonated with you, take a moment to like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Let's keep building a space for honest human conversations around the markets. Because in the end, success begins in silence.